So welcome to this odd, intimate world of mine. I'm here with the most lovely people in the world, and I'm here with some books. I'm here with my friends. I'm doing all kinds of great things. But I think maybe if we're going to talk, let's head outside.
Bye, Malcolm.
So before we get out to the garden, I want to show you around here. There's a tapestry that my wife brought with her. She grew up in Europe, and she had it when she was a kid. And over there is a world that my wife has made for her grandchildren. We've got 4 grandchildren, and she makes these worlds for them. Every week it's a different world. And they come in, they play with them, they set up things. Here's a dollhouse that they set up. Up over there is a picture that my oldest son painted. And it's books and things. And hey, listen, I'm aware that I'm stuttering. I'm aware of how weak my voice is. It's 12 years of Parkinson's. So please bear with me. Thanks. So here's my wife, Rena. And here's our refrigerator. I once wanted to do an art show of artist refrigerators. I think people's refrigerators tell you more about who they are than almost anything else. So I made my living by deep hanging out. It's what Clifford Gertz, an anthropologist, said anthropology was deep hanging out. And I've been hanging out with California Indians for 45 years, and I've learned some things that I think everybody should know, and I've learned them from people. And among the people that I've known have been people like Vivian Hailstone and David Risling. So they were born along the Klamath River in Northern California. And the Klamath River it's a salmon fishing river. My wonderful friend Ricky Oliver lived at the mouth of it, and it was his family that would sing the salmon into the river, and then you had and Vivian Hailstone and David Risling came from one of the most wealthy families on the river. Their father, David Risling Sr., was said that he could outfit jump dance for 10 straight days with different riggings for each dance. I think there were 6 dances a day. And jump dance is a world renewal dance. And the riggings that they had there were red woodpecker scalps, there were albino deer skins, there were big pieces of obsidian. The riggings were all divinities that had turned themselves into dance regalia, so people could see the beauty of the next world, and to have these things, to own these things was wealth, and yet it was a kind of divine wealth, and to own them you had to be good, and if you had to use them well, you were responsible for them. And this business of ownership and responsibility is something we could really learn from Indians. I think that along the Klamath River there was a fishing spot that was owned by 11 different people. And one family had 7 fishing rights in the morning, one family had 7 fishing rights in the afternoon, one family had river crossing rights, another family had wood collecting rights, another family could collect acorns from the oak, another family could collect driftwood, another family could collect woodpecker scalps from the woodpeckers that were there. And each family had rights to use it. And because everybody had rights to this, you had to protect other people's rights. And it was a world of responsibilities along with ownership. It was a world in which it was a world that was tremendously alive. And I go with my old friend Bun Lucas. Bun Lucas was Kashaya Pomo. He grew up speaking the language, and when he'd go out and we passed certain rocks, he'd quiet down because the rocks had memories, the rocks had life. There were certain trees that remembered things. I remember once I was up around the Namalaki world, up in the upper Sacramento River with my friend Cody Pata. And Cody was leading us to these trees. They were witness trees. The trees had remembered the expulsion of the Concow Maidu and his people when they were driven to Round Valley to the reservation, and they passed those trees. It was a kind of trail of tears, and these trees still had the memory of it. So people would go to the trees to revive that memory of it. There was a sense that the houses that people lived in had memories. Up in the Klamath River, there was these wooden houses, and these houses had memories. When you were born into, when you'd see a person from the house of Wogwu, the houses were named. You see somebody from the house of Wogwu, that person would come out of the house, and she might be wearing a dress, and you'd know from the way she walked that she was from the house of Wogwu, and you'd also know from the way the abalone tinkled on the dress, that each dress would have a song, and it would be the song of the house of Wogwu. And it was such a well-known world, and to know the world that well is such for those of us who came from someplace else, it's such an amazing gift. I think that one of my favorite things to do is to go around with Indians to their land and see things that they point out. I remember my wonderful friend Connor, and Connor grew up in Ione, in the central, in the Delta area. It's near Sacramento. It's toward the foothills, and Ione had a big roundhouse that was kind of the Harvard or the Princeton of California Indian roundhouses. They talk about how Pedro Connor used to sing there, how these great people would come to these roundhouses and do ceremonies. And so once Connor and my friend Brian Bibby gave me a tour of the land, and it was a land that you'll never see otherwise. We toured the land, and we saw the place where, in the beginning of the world, there was a big bird that had put its foot into some clay, and they left an impression. There was a place where yerba santa grew. It was a medical herb that had the most powerful, it's the most powerful place in the world. There's a place where the old roundhouse had been. There's a place they called the baby smashing rock. It's when the whites moved in and they would take the infants and they'd smash their heads against this rock as part of the genocide. And there were places where Connor had built a fence with his father, and there were places where, and it was this wonderful mixture of myth and of history and of present day stuff, and places were really well known. And because they were well known, people had a sense of, they knew who they were. Each place had a phenomenological calendar, and this calendar would connect incidents. My friend Ben Lucas was up in the Kashaya Pomo land, and there were some elderberries there, and the elderberries were blossoming with a wonderful fragrant blossom. And I said, "Bun, isn't it beautiful?" And he says, "Yes." He said, "But when I see it, I'm sad." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because it means when the elderberry blossoms, we can no longer go to Stewart's Point and collect shellfish." I said, "Oh, how do you know? How do you know when it's safe to collect it again?" He says, "The elderberries tell us it's when the berries are ripe in the fall." And he keyed me onto the fact that each of these tribes had a calendar, and so you'd have the strawberry festival would celebrate the ripening of the strawberries, and it was a calendar marking. Then would come the time when you could go up to the hills to collect Brodea bulbs, and if you went to collect the Brodea bulbs at the right time, you'd pluck them up, and you'd strip off the bulblets, and the Brodea was Indian potatoes, the little potatoes. And so you dig up the soil with a digging stick. You take the bulblets and they go into the soil. The next year you'd have many more Brodea bulbs collecting, and it was the sense that the Indians had that the world wanted Indians to collect things. The Indians cared for the land, and there was a sense that the beauties of the world were there for people to use and to flourish. the basket makers. I was part of the organization of the first Californian Indian Basket Weavers Association meetings, and these basket weavers came from all over the place, and they're so wonderful. I remember Julia Parker once told me how it was, I think it was up at Hooper Reservation, and we were looking around, and Mrs. Sylvie was there, and Vivian Hailstone was alive, Norma Turner was alive, Mrs. Finney was alive. All these great old weavers were alive, and I said, look, Julia, look who's here. And she says, you don't, I said, basket weavers attracted the best people in the world. She says, Malcolm, you don't understand. It's baskets that make us this way. And I think that people are made by the art that they have and by the place that they come from. And people knew who they were back then. If you came from a particular place, you'd know which rocks had power. You'd know where your center of the world was. And because of this, you'd have a knowledge of who you were. And I think, so up again on the Klamath River, you have the center of the world for the Yurok is Connect, the center of the world for the Karuk is Katamine, the center of the world for the Hoopa is Takamildig. Each place has their own center of the world, and it's within. And they'll dance at each other's center of the world. But you ask a Karuk guy, how can there be two centers? He says, well, they're their center, we have our center. And in Europe, we would have had a religious war in which millions of people would have been killed until the one true center of the world got recognized. But there it was different because they knew their land. They knew the power of that center. And they could express, and they could understand the fact that the world was bigger than our capacity to understand it. And I think, and that for me is what I get out of California Indians, is the sense that the world is bigger than our capacity to understand it, and that language can be used not to conquer the world, but to express the miracles of it all. I think that I got into this as a writer and a publisher, not knowing what I was getting into. I wrote several books on California Indians. I published over 50 books on California Indians through Heyday Books. And then some of them were native languages. I then helped create some of the institutions that are around now, the language institutions that have been influential in language revival, and the California Basket Weavers Association and other things. But what drew me to that magazine in 1987 was this older generation of people. The people that are so wonderful. My friend Jennifer Bates. Jennifer Bates is a basket weaver. Her mother was Dorothy Stanley. And Jennifer and I are working on bringing a festival to the Bay Area every year of the best California Indian artists and craftspeople around. David Smith. David Smith grew up in Kashaya Reservation, and Kashaya Reservation was a remote place, and he was a singing family, and they retained the songs over the years that other places had forgotten. But this book is done by my friend Dugan Aguilar. And Dugan died recently, and I'm working with the State Library to acquire his archives. Dugan would talk about how these pictures were given to him. In our culture, we take pictures. We think we can go out and take things. We think we can go out and get knowledge. Back then, the knowledge was given to you. These pictures were given to Dugan, and they had that wonderful passivity and that relaxed quality. They're not like Curtis photos that are posed. They're family photos. People are themselves. Joaquin Miller called the California Indians a race of dreamers and druids, and I think they are. So in 1987, I created News from Native California to get to that older generation of people. And the people that grew up with knowing about, they were taught about life by people that had remembered California before the gold rush. And there were people so today people talk about Mother Earth, and they talk about the Earth taking care of them. Back then, the people that I knew were into witchcrafts, they were into healings, they were into songs. The Earth was not a gentle place, it was a fierce place, and they knew it well. And I think we have something to learn from that knowledge and something to that imaginative capacity. And there were so many of these people around. Edna Guerrero, Salome Alcantara, Francis Jack, Nelson Hopper, all these great old timers were around. And to be with them was to have another world come to you. And they were all dying off. So I created News from Native California to interview them and to do a eulogy for that world. Out of News from Native California, it was a magazine published quarterly, and we had a calendar of events. And in these events, we began to run notice of all these younger Indians who were doing things. And it was in 1987, it was before computers were widespread. So people didn't realize that on these remote reservations, there were people like Lauren Bumelin in the Tolowa world, learning Tolowa. There were people like Julian Lang learning Karuk. There were people like Bill Franklin, who'd rebuilt a roundhouse. There were people that were reviving dances and arts. And it became, so News from Native California witnessed a marvelous cultural revival. And for me, I came to deliver a eulogy for a world that I thought was dying. I found myself present at a rebirth. And it's that rebirth that I want to announce to the world and hand out cigars so that we can all celebrate what a beautiful thing this rebirth is. I think it's something that we need for our own self-understanding. It's California's oldest, deepest sense of itself. It has something to tell us about life and about ourselves. And I think people ask me what a Jewish guy from Boston is doing in this world. My question is, why the hell isn't everybody into it? So come on into it.